After too much pain, people do not always fall apart. Sometimes they just become easier to handle. They start saying less, needing less, explaining less. They say, "I'm good," before they even know if that is true. They act like they do not mind. They stop asking twice. They pull back early, so disappointment does not have to do it for them. And the dangerous part is, they usually do not realize this is happening, because it does not feel dramatic. It feels like maturity, like being private, like being independent, like being low maintenance, like being strong. But sometimes that is not your personality. Sometimes that is what happens when your nervous system learns that being fully seen, fully needy, or fully honest can cost too much. So you begin editing yourself in real time, not to be fake, not to be cold, just to be safer. And if you do that for long enough, you stop calling it self-protection. You start calling it who you are. It usually does not look dramatic. It looks like somebody asking, "How have you been?" in the office kitchen. And you saying, "Good, just busy," before your body has even caught up with the question. It looks like replying to a long text with "all good," because that ends the conversation faster than the truth would. It looks like laughing something off at dinner, changing the subject in the group chat, saying it's fine on a date when it is not fine, saying no worries when there are, in fact, worries. That is how this starts. Not with a breakdown, with small edits. You stop giving the full answer. You give the safe answer, the short answer, the answer that does not make anyone lean in too far. And after a while, that becomes automatic. You stop saying when something hurts while it is still happening. You stop saying, "Can you help me?" in a normal voice. You stop saying, "Actually, that bothered me." Your first reflex becomes, "I got it." Not because you always have it, because somewhere in you, needing less started to feel smarter than needing honestly. So now, when you are overwhelmed, you do not always reach out. You clean the apartment, answer emails, run errands, scroll, stay useful, stay moving, handle first, feel later. And before you show any real part of yourself, you check the room. You hear the tone before the words. You notice who interrupts, who gets uncomfortable fast, who turns vulnerability into gossip, who asks questions just to fill silence. So in a friend group, at the dinner table, on a first date, in a meeting, you do not just show up as yourself. You make a decision. How much of me is safe here? And that decision happens fast now. So fast, it no longer feels like a decision. Sometimes the smaller version of you walks in first, the easier version, the lighter version, the version with less need, less disappointment, less risk. And then there is the way you leave. Not always by walking out. That would be too obvious. Sometimes you stay in the conversation, but stop explaining. Stay in the relationship, but stop asking. Stay at the table, but quietly expect less. You pull your hope back early. You lower your voice inside yourself. You tell yourself, "It's whatever," before the hurt has fully landed. From the outside, this can look like maturity, like being chill, like being private, like being independent. But sometimes it is something else. Sometimes it is what happens when a person has been hurt enough times that they learn to become easier to carry, easier to manage, easier to disappoint. And they do it so well, it starts to look like personality. That is the part almost nobody talks about. You usually do not know you are doing this while you are doing it. You are not sitting there thinking, "I am shrinking myself to feel safe." You are thinking, "I don't want to make this a whole thing. It's not that serious. I'm fine. I can handle it. Let it go." That is why it hides so well. Because it does not feel like fear. It feels like being easy, being mature, being the one who does not overreact. It looks like typing out the honest text, reading it once, then deleting half of it before you hit send. It looks like someone asking if something is wrong, and you hearing yourself say, "No, I'm just tired," because that answer is easier to carry. It looks like wanting reassurance, but saying nothing because you do not want to sound needy. It looks like getting hurt, feeling it instantly, and still telling yourself, "Don't be dramatic." You do not call that self-protection. You call it personality. You call it, "I'm just private. I'm just not a needy person. I'm just better on my own. I don't like burdening people. I don't like talking about my feelings that much. That's just how I am. And maybe some of that is true. But sometimes that is not who you are. Sometimes that is what you learned was safest. Because when something works often enough, your body stops treating it like a strategy. It starts treating it like common sense. Of course, you say no worries when there are worries. Of course, you say it's all good before checking whether it is. Of course, you act unbothered. Of course, you pull back before asking again. Of course, you keep the heavier version of your feelings off to the side. It does not feel like hiding. It feels like keeping things simple. And the world usually rewards that version of you. People call you chill, low drama, independent, strong, easy to be around. So why would you question it? Why would you look at something everyone praises and think, maybe this is the shape my survival took? You usually notice much later. When people love you, but still do not really know you. When asking for help feels weirdly unnatural. When you can be competent all day, but honest for 5 minutes feels like too much exposure. When rest makes you restless. When intimacy feels harder than handling everything alone. That is usually when it starts to hit you. The pain never really disappeared. You just got used to making it less visible. First to other people, then little by little to yourself. And that is why you did not notice. Because it never introduced itself as self-protection. It introduced itself as, this is just how I am. This is the part that can feel strangely relieving once you understand it. Because a lot of what you call personality may actually be protection that got practiced too many times. Your nervous system is not always asking, what is the most honest thing I feel right now? A lot of the time, it is asking something much simpler. What is the safest way to get through this moment? That is why, after too much pain, people often stop telling the full truth in real time. Not because they are fake, not because they are manipulative, not because they are emotionally shallow. Their body is just trying to lower the chance of more hurt. If openness once led to embarrassment, conflict, rejection, tension, or being misunderstood, your system remembers that. So the next time something personal rises in your throat, your body may quietly do the math before you do. Should I say the whole thing? Should I make it lighter? Should I laugh a little? Should I act like it does not matter that much? That is not a moral failure. That is risk reduction. And once you see it that way, a lot of things start making sense. Why you hear yourself saying, I'm good so quickly. Why you downplay what bothered you. Why you ask for less than you actually need. Why you read someone's tone before you decide how honest to be. Why you send the softer text instead of the true one. Your nervous system is trying to do one job. Keep the moment from becoming more painful than it has to be. That is also why you can end up looking calm when you are actually just careful. From the outside, it may look like composure. Inside, it can be a lot of quiet work. Reading the room, reading the face, reading the pause, editing your words, lowering your needs, making sure what you say is safe enough to say. That is tiring. Not because you are weak. Because self-protection is work. Sometimes that is why fine feels so exhausting. Because fine is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is something you are managing. And this is the part most people never realize. Pain does not always teach people to hide completely. More often, it teaches them to turn themselves down. Like a dimmer switch. You are still there. Still feeling, still wanting, still hurting. Just at a lower volume. And if you do that often enough, it stops feeling like something you learned to do. It starts feeling like who you are. You think, I'm just private. I'm just careful. I'm just not that kind of person. But sometimes the truth is simpler than that. Sometimes your body just learned that it was safer to be less exposed, less disappointed, less easy to hurt. So no, this is not a flaw. It is a nervous system trying to protect you the best way it knows how. And sometimes it protects you by teaching you to turn yourself down before life gets the chance to do it for you. This is where it gets real, because this does not just live in your head. It shows up on a Tuesday, at work, in your texts, at dinner, in bed at night, in all the places where adult life looks normal from the outside. At work, It can look like being the easiest person to depend on and the hardest person to really read. You answer, yeah, I can do that, before you even check how full your plate already is. You say, no problem, because that comes out faster than, actually, I'm already stretched thin. You notice when the mood in the meeting changes. You notice when your boss sounds irritated. You notice when a coworker's quick question is not going to be quick. So you adjust. You smooth things over. You keep your tone even. You make yourself pleasant, useful, easy to work with. And people love that version of you. They call you reliable, solid, calm under pressure, a team player. What they do not see is you sitting in your car after work, staring at nothing for 10 minutes before driving home. Or standing in your kitchen eating over the sink because you are too tired to even decide what dinner is. Or snapping at absolutely nothing because your body has been bracing all day and finally ran out of room. In relationships, it can look like caring a lot and saying very little. You start typing the honest text, then you delete half of it, then maybe all of it. You tell yourself, don't make this bigger than it is. You see, they took 2 hours to reply and immediately start acting cooler than you feel. You rehearse how to bring something up. Then when the moment comes, you hear yourself say, it's okay, even though it is not okay. You want reassurance, but by the time you are about to ask for it, you already feel embarrassed for needing it. So you pull back first. Not in some dramatic movie scene way, in regular adult ways. You text a little less. You act a little more casual. You tell yourself, it's fine, just match their energy. You stop asking the second question. You stop saying the more honest sentence. Because if you ask for too much and it is not there, that hurts. So part of you would rather need less. With friends, it can look like always being the one people come to. You answer the late night call. You remember birthdays. You check in when someone's going through it. You know how to make people laugh when the room gets heavy. You are easy to talk to because you know how to make other people feel safe. But when the conversation turns toward you, something changes. You shorten the story. You make the hard part sound lighter. You throw in a joke. You say, I mean, it's whatever. You ask them a question so the spotlight moves off you again. You are there. You are loving. You are a good friend. But a lot of people only know the version of you that knows how to be easy to receive. And then there is the part nobody sees. You get home. The shoes come off. The door closes. No one needs anything from you now. So why can't your body settle? You pick up your phone, put it down, open the fridge, close it, walk around, start cleaning something that does not need cleaning. Check a text again. Look at the same app for no reason. Tell yourself to relax. Feel even less relaxed. Because when you have spent years staying ahead of disappointment, stillness can feel weirdly exposed. Silence does not always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels like waiting. Waiting for the text. Waiting for the mood shift. Waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Waiting for a reason to tense up again. And that is the part people miss. You are not just hiding from other people. Sometimes you are hiding from the moment your own need becomes too obvious to ignore. The moment you would have to admit, I'm hurt. I'm lonely. I wanted more from that. I'm more tired than I keep saying. I actually do need comfort. So instead, you stay useful, stay agreeable, stay low maintenance, stay busy, stay chill. And because all of that looks so normal in adult life, nobody calls it disappearing. They call it being good at handling things. And this is the part that hurts the most. Not that you learned how to do this, not that you became careful, not even that you had to protect yourself. It is that you may have done it for so long, so well, so automatically, that people now think this edited version is just you. They think they know you. They know the calm version, the reliable version, the one who does not ask for much, the one who says, I'm good, and sounds believable, the one who is easy to work with, easy to be around, easy to not worry about. And maybe all of that is real, but it may not be the whole truth, because there is a difference between being naturally peaceful and becoming easy to manage. There is a difference between being grounded and learning how not to show impact. There is a difference between being independent and being so used to not reaching that reaching now feels unnatural. That grief is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the quiet ache of realizing there may have been a version of you that used to reach more freely, ask more freely, laugh without checking the room first, hope without bracing, speak before editing, need something without feeling embarrassed for having needed it. And maybe you do not even fully remember that version. Maybe you only feel the outline of them. In certain moments, a sudden warmth, a random memory, a version of yourself that shows up for half a second and disappears again. That is part of the cost, because safe is not the same as alive. When you reduce pain, sometimes you also reduce spontaneity. When you reduce rejection, sometimes you also reduce intimacy. When you reduce exposure, sometimes you also reduce aliveness. You get hurt less, but you are not fully reached either. And maybe that is the deepest tragedy in all of this. Not that pain hurt you. Of course it did. But that it may have stayed long enough to teach you how to disappear in ways the world would praise. To become calmer, quieter, easier, smaller, so gracefully that even you began to call it your personality. Maybe your strength is real. But maybe part of what people call strength is simply what happened after you learned it was safer to be less visible. And if this video found something in you that you have never had words for before, that is what Psyche-Life is here for. Not to judge you, not to rush you, just to help you know yourself a little more honestly. If this touched something real in you, stay with us. Subscribe to Psyche-Life. Leave a like, leave a comment if you want to. Even one honest line is enough, because sometimes the first step towards seeing yourself is simply hearing the truth said out loud. And maybe that is what pain does when it stays too long. It does not always destroy you in obvious ways. Sometimes it just teaches you to become smaller so gracefully that even you begin to call it who you are.